You don't satisfy me anymore. My boss knows how to please a real woman. That sentence didn't echo, it detonated. It wasn't whispered in some dark corner of a bar or confessed over a guilt-ridden text. No, she said it into a laptop mic, smirking like a game show host, swaddled in a hotel robe, leaning back on feathered pillows. The background? Dim, expensive, unmistakably not our bedroom. Her glass of champagne caught the light just as the screen froze. My parents' smiles wilted. Her mother blinked like she'd heard a gunshot. My uncle, who hasn't spoken to me in 5 years, actually whispered, "Jesus." And my little cousin? She mouthed, "What the F?" before her mom yanked the tablet away. Over 100 people. Family, friends, old coworkers. Our anniversary party. She called it her big moment. Asked me to help with tech setup all week. Then she used it to announce her orgasm resume. A faint voice in the background mumbled, "You're unbelievable." Presumably the boss who apparently pleases real women. I wonder if real women file FMLA under his sheets or just under his desk. I stared at the screen for another 3 seconds. Not for her. Not for him. For everyone else. Those frozen faces holding their breath, wondering how I'd react. Waiting for me to scream, cry, slam the laptop shut. Give them drama. Instead, I clicked leave meeting. No expression. No raised voice. I got up, walked past the untouched anniversary cake, past the framed triptych of our wedding in Tuscany, her choice, and opened the hallway closet. Behind the extra router cables and gift wrap rolls was a small safe. Inside it, a black leather folder labeled Contingency Alpha. No gold embossing. Just a plain label in my handwriting. I walked it to my study, cleared the desk, and opened it. 11 months of documentation. Cross-indexed, logged, time-stamped. Not just the affair. That was the easy part. I'd noticed the change in her 6 weeks before our last anniversary. Her wardrobe got flashier, but never around me. Her conversations shorter, but always after team meetings. The wine rack got emptier, the hotel point balance fuller. I didn't react then either. I just listened, and logged, and waited. People like her. Charming, reactive, convinced of their own bulletproof brilliance. They always self-immolate. You just have to wait for the right spark. This Zoom stunt. That was a flamethrower. The folder contained printouts of corporate travel reports that didn't match expense logs. 3 transcriptions of drunken voicemails left on our landline by her boss. He thought it was her cell. A memo she sent him with a proposal for after-hours compliance training, CC'd only to his private Gmail, not the company address. Hotel invoices with repeat bookings under client escalation debrief. A signed post-nup addendum she forgot she ever agreed to, filed during her anxiety month, when she'd signed anything for peace. And one last item. A printed memo from our attorney marked, Zoom clause activated, trigger event logged. I stared at that last one for a long time. I hadn't looked at it since drafting it with my lawyer 10 months ago, back when she started using company credit cards for client dinners that always ended after midnight. Back when I made sure every camera in this house saved backups, not for her, but in case I ever needed to prove my own sanity. The Zoom clause was a private joke, a fantasy scenario, a clause so absurdly specific we almost laughed drafting it. In the event of public humiliation in the presence of 3 or more immediate family members via teleconference, she signed it in a rush, mistaking it for another mutual NDA. And now it was real. I dialed the number on the back page. A line I hadn't called since the retainer was established. It rang once. A calm male voice answered. "Ready to execute?" I didn't speak, just nodded once. Phase 1 begins tonight. By the way, if you're still reading and you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. More than 90% of people listen without subscribing, and it's the one thing that actually motivates our team to keep dropping stories like this. No ads, no fluff, just pure execution. Hit the button, because this was just the beginning. You don't just prepare for betrayal in a day. You sense it, like static before a storm. You catalog the shifts, the calendar invites she won't show you, the weekly strategy syncs that start lasting past midnight, the perfume that changes without warning or mention. Not new, not even subtle, just unearned. And so, 11 months ago, I started collecting. The folder wasn't born out of paranoia. It was built on pattern recognition. I'd been in acquisitions long enough to know when someone's posture shifts before a hostile move. And this was hostile, not an affair, an operation. And the way she played it, she assumed I was stupid enough to still be in love. Inside the folder, 47 pages of hotel invoices tied to her company's corporate card, cross-referenced with my own GPS data showing she never left town. 3 transcribed voicemails left by her boss, slurring about taking what's mine tonight, all sent to our home landline because he thought she still lived here. 1 printed spreadsheet of meal expenses filed under team building during weekends when the office was closed and the office manager was in Cabo. 6 internal memos between her and her boss, casually discussing after-hours synergy, all time-stamped outside work policy hours and, critically, sent through a non-secured channel. 1 copy of the amended post-nup agreement she initialed in a wine haze, which included an obscure clause about reputational harm during shared public events. 1 envelope containing a USB with screen recordings from our smart home system, audio disabled, but clear enough to show movement patterns, overnight guests, and most importantly, missing wedding rings. But the most important document? A sealed, notarized letter from my legal team titled, Trigger Memo, Zoom Clause Activated. It wasn't some petty contract line. It was a landmine. The clause was added as a joke during a tense call with my attorney after I'd shown him her joking Instagram comments under her boss's posts. He suggested codifying a public defamation clause. I went a step further. If she ever publicly humiliates me in front of immediate family, via live digital broadcast involving over 10 individuals, without pre-approval, with sexual or reputational implications, I remember saying, that should be a trigger event. He blinked. You're serious? Deadly. She signed it while watching Netflix, signing a stack of documents I told her were minor financial housekeeping. She never asked, never checked, never even looked at the tab name. I reread the trigger memo. It started with, as of 8:42 p.m., per footage logs and independent witness corroboration, the conditions of Clause 9b, Zoom clause, are met in full. No emotion, no drama, just legal affirmation of what I already knew. I was no longer in a marriage. I was in a liability war, and I'd already mined the field. The prepaid legal retainer, $75,000, had been sitting in escrow, all contingent on one event. 1 sentence. She chose it with flair. You don't satisfy me anymore. She might as well have said, checkmate. I pressed dial on a clean phone. 1 number. No name. Ready to execute? The voice said. I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. Phase 1 begins tonight. No more second chances. No room for doubt. She fired first, loudly, stupidly, publicly. Now it was time for silence. And strategy. The morning after her little one-woman burlesque act on Zoom, she was still asleep. Mouth open, eyeliner smudged like war paint, tucked in silk sheets at her boss's penthouse. Penthouse he swore was temporary, while his divorce processed, though county records told another story. She thought she'd won something. Upgraded. Traded loyalty for leverage. She hadn't checked her phone yet. Or the door. At 8:06 a.m. sharp, a courier in a dark navy jacket rang the intercom at her old address, our address. No answer, obviously. No movement on the porch cameras either. The courier left the envelope in the antique mailbox she insisted on installing. Inside, a crisp, cream-colored folder stamped in red. Notice of ownership clarification. At the top was the full deed to the $3.2 million home she'd always called theirs. But her name? Nowhere on it. Not a comma. Not a co-signature. Because she never asked. And I never offered. She thought she was clever when she sweet-talked me into splitting the mortgage payments. It's just a signature, she said one afternoon, handing me a check for her half. I smiled, thanked her, and filed it. Not as co-ownership, just as rent. She posted photos of the foyer on Instagram like she'd built it brick by brick. Caption 1. Home is where the heart and the wine fridge is. Got 400 likes. And not a single clue. Attached to the deed was a notarized eviction intent. Not aggressive, just procedural. Per local code, the inhabitant had 14 days to vacate or contest, provided they could show proof of co-ownership or tenancy. She couldn't. Not legally. Emotionally, maybe. But the law doesn't do emotional support. While that envelope sat baking in the sun, I was across town, 15 floors up, in a quiet conference room with 6 attorneys and 2 federal compliance officers. They didn't waste time with small talk. 3 of them represented a multinational firm that had recently acquired a controlling interest in her boss's tech company. They were concerned about recent publicity irregularities. I handed over a packet labeled SEC vulnerabilities, relationship conflicts, improper perks, breach risks. One attorney flipped it open, read the first page, and went still. These dates, they match our flag statements. Another skimmed through an attached email chain. She used your home IP address to transmit project files? I nodded. Twice. While using company devices. I've got the logs if you want them. They did. The federal agents mostly watched. Took notes. One of them asked a single question. Were either of them informed this data was traceable? I smiled. No, but they should have known. The software was installed to protect against fraud. And it had. Just not their kind. As they combed through the documents, one of the attorneys muttered, "This exposes us. Not just him. We're liable by association if we don't report it." Someone else whispered, "Compliance deadlines next week. If this leaks first, then it's not a leak," I interrupted. "It's a self-report." That's when the room shifted. From defense to triage. They weren't trying to help her boss anymore. They were trying to cut him loose before his infection spread. They asked me to stay quiet. I said I already was. They offered to cover the disclosure paperwork fees. I told them I already filed them. They requested the original memos she sent her boss using their logo without approval. I slid over a separate folder. Signed, dated, stupidly bold. A message thread titled, "You, me, and a bottle of Q4 margin." Romantic and incriminating. The perfect cocktail. As I left the building, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I hadn't seen in months. Her mom. "Please tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding. Please." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back. The misunderstanding was thinking I wasn't watching. And that was only the third step. The foundation was gone. Next came the ceiling. And it was already cracking. Monday morning, her boss, let's call him Weston, because of course his name is Weston, rolled into the office 30 minutes late, holding a smoothie, wearing his usual, "I'm richer than you but still chill" look. Unbuttoned collar, no tie, and sneakers that cost more than my first car. He was the kind of man who treated company money like poker chips and interns like baristas. The kind of man who called HR soft costs and legal a speed bump. The kind of man who thought the rules were written for other people. He swiped into the executive floor like he owned the air, waved at a junior VP with a wink that probably warranted a second complaint, and strode into conference room expecting to be briefed on quarterly burn rates. Instead, he found 5 men in tailored charcoal suits, seated and waiting. 2 were legal counsel from his own board. 2 were from the SEC compliance team that had been quietly tracking anomalies tied to non-disclosed personal affiliations within executive leadership. The 5th, a rep from one of the company's largest investors. Stone-faced, unsmiling, holding a copy of a memo with the words "risk flagged. Failure TO report conflicted relationship" stamped across the top. Weston froze mid-step. Are we doing a risk audit today?" He laughed. Weakly. The legal counsel didn't even blink. One slid a folder across the table. "We're initiating a preliminary inquiry into misuse of executive discretion, hostile workplace dynamics, and failure to disclose a romantic entanglement with a direct subordinate." Weston tried to sit down, missed the edge of the chair, caught himself, and barked out a laugh. "Come on. This is about what? Jessica? We were just not interested in your adjectives." One of the SEC reps cut in. "We're concerned about specific incidents, including the use of her former marital home's IP address to transmit contract-sensitive files between 11:43 p.m. and 1:17 a.m. on 2 separate dates." Weston's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. She said it was her home. Legally, it wasn't, nor was she authorized to forward those attachments. And since you were CC'd directly, they let the sentence hang. That's when his phone buzzed. He fumbled it out of his pocket. "HR. Text. Please meet in conference room B. Urgent." He didn't move. One of the attorneys stood, buttoned his jacket. "I'd suggest you don't keep them waiting. You'll want to be compliant on this one." He didn't speak, just stared at the phone, as if it had turned to ice in his hand. In conference room B, things got worse. Waiting for him was a printed transcript of one of his drunken voicemails to her, ripped from my own recording archives. It included the phrase, "You're mine now, not his," followed by a slurred comment about access codes and priority shares. Also waiting for him, his company email log, which showed multiple non-business hour exchanges with her via unsecured platforms, in breach of company cybersecurity policy. HR didn't ask him to resign. Yet, they asked for a written response to the allegations. By end of day, Weston tried blustering. He mentioned his long history with the firm, his vision, the markets, and his role in landing the Series E funding round. They listened. Then one slid a sheet across the table. A quiet suggestion. Administrative leave. Effective immediately. Pending findings. Weston stared at it. You could almost see the power draining from his body, like someone had turned off the oxygen. He didn't sign. Not yet. But they knew he would, because every page in that folder had been planted weeks ago, one breadcrumb at a time. And Weston? Weston had just followed the trail right off the cliff. She woke up around 10:40 a.m., later than usual. Her phone was face down on the nightstand, half buried under a hotel receipt and a wrapper from room service truffles. She stretched like a cat in a sunbeam, not a care in the world, wearing nothing but one of Weston's monogrammed button-downs. The penthouse smelled like eucalyptus body oil and expensive lies. She reached for the phone, expecting a morning selfie from Weston, maybe a thank you text for last night's performance. Instead, she found a wall of missed calls, 9, all in the early hours. 2 from HR, 1 from her mother, 3 from unknown numbers. The rest? Silence. As if people had called just to witness the wreck and backed away without leaving a trace. She sat up, blinking at the screen. Her pulse didn't quicken until she tapped open one of the news alerts. She expected gossip, maybe a scandal blog. What she got instead was Bloomberg. SEC review expands to executive conduct at Hollenbridge after alleged misuse of corporate resources. Underneath the headline, her name. Not Weston's. Hers. Her name. Bolded. Tied to the phrase unreported relationship and irregular file transmissions. She blinked. Scanned the article again. No photos, just quotes. One sentence made her throat tighten. Sources suggest employee actions may have violated company compliance protocols related to confidentiality and personal conduct clauses. She dropped the phone on the duvet, suddenly aware of how cold the room felt. A moment later, it rang. Unknown number. She picked up, because denial only lasts until you hear your name said by someone who knows too much. This is Special Counsel Rains, a clipped male voice said. I'm calling to inform you that you'll be receiving formal notice later today regarding your involvement in ongoing investigations into executive misconduct at Hollenbridge. She tried to swallow. Failed. Wait. I think this is a misunderstanding. Weston and we weren't. I'd advise you not to speak further about Mr. Tanning. In fact, I strongly suggest you avoid contact with him entirely. From this moment forward, anything you say could be interpreted as coordination. Cord, what the hell? We didn't do anything illegal. Whether or not something qualifies as illegal isn't the only concern here, he replied. You violated internal policy. You accessed confidential material offsite and from a device linked to your former marital residence. Her voice cracked. That was my house too. No, it wasn't. Legally, it never was. She was about to scream something, anything, when the call ended. Her phone vibrated again. This time, an email. Subject: access revoked, urgent notice. The contents were brief. Your company credentials have been temporarily suspended pending the outcome of an internal investigation. Please do not return to the premises until further notice. Attached was a PDF titled Internal Review Protocol. Employee number 47286, Jessica L. She slammed the laptop shut before opening it, as if the screen itself was contaminated. Another buzz. Text from HR. Please check your corporate email. We'll follow up shortly. She stared at the device like it might explode. And then she did what most people do when the world starts to unravel. She reached for something familiar. Me. She pulled up my contact, tapped call. Straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She texted instead. Can we talk? No reply. Not immediately. Not after 30 minutes. Not after rereading the Zoom call thread 3 times to see if she'd somehow misremembered how it all started. She opened Instagram out of habit. Half her recent photos were gone. Not deleted. Reported. Probably flagged as inappropriate workplace conduct. She tapped Weston's name. No new posts. No new stories. No vacation shots. Just a sudden, deafening absence where his ego usually screamed. Another vibration. She grabbed the phone, heart leaping. Just an automated text from her building's security system. Please collect any packages before Friday. Your access badge will expire at end of week per employer request. She stared at it, mouth dry. Outside, the sky was bright. Blue. Indifferent. She didn't know it yet, but the storm wasn't coming. It had already passed. And everything left was water damage. They didn't knock twice. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the elevator to Weston's penthouse gave its signature chime. He had just opened a bottle of something French and smug. She was curled up on the couch, phone off, nails bitten down, still hoping this was just corporate bluster. A scare tactic. Something Weston could charm his way out of like he always bragged he could. Instead, the doors slid open, and reality stepped in, wearing suits. 3 attorneys. 2 federal marshals. No shouting. No badges flashed dramatically. No cuffs. Just efficiency wrapped in silence. One of the marshals held a slim black folder. Another held a small parcel box, sealed and labeled, "Legal Service, Confidential Distribution." "Mr. Tanning?" the lead attorney asked. Weston, barefoot, still in his cashmere sweater, gave the kind of smile men give when they know they're guilty but haven't figured out what for yet. "Can we do this another time?" The attorney didn't smile back. He handed over the parcel. 3 envelopes. One for you. One for Ms. Linton. One for corporate legal at Hollenbridge. All time-stamped and notarized. Weston took his, frowning. "What is this?" He opened it. "Read the first sentence." His lips moved like he was trying to form an objection. Then his face went bloodless. He didn't read aloud. He just sat, slowly, like someone realizing the chair might collapse, but there's nowhere else to fall. Jessica, still in one of his oversized t-shirts, reached for hers with a trembling hand. Opened it. Pulled out the first page. The header read, "Formal termination of employment. Cause cited. Section 4B, 4C, and 5D, Hollenbridge Ethics Code." Below that, "Employee 47286 is hereby suspended pending civil investigation and ineligible for rehire across all Hollenbridge subsidiaries, affiliates, and partnered firms." She flipped the page, and there it was. Notice of pending civil suit. Plaintiff, E. Linton, post-nup enforcement. Her breath hitched. Not just a lawsuit. My lawsuit. The next page was a scanned copy of the post-nuptial agreement she'd once signed in a moment of feigned contrition during our 3rd year of marriage. She had never read the whole thing, just trusted the lawyer, who, surprise, was on my retainer. The clause was bolded in yellow. Section 8A, Public Defamation Trigger. In the event the undersigned spouse publicly humiliates, sexually disparages, or otherwise degrades the reputation of the signee during a public or digitally broadcast setting with an audience exceeding 3 individuals, all protections related to spousal asset distribution are waived in full. In other words, she forfeited everything. House, residuals, future claims, everything. She dropped the page. Weston was still staring at his. One hand gripped the edge of the table like he was bracing for an earthquake. The attorney placed the 3rd envelope neatly on the kitchen counter. "Corporate counsel at Hollenbridge will receive this digitally within the hour, but we're required to deliver a hard copy to both principal parties as well." Jessica looked up. Her voice cracked. "What happens next?" The marshal, not the attorney, answered. "Depends on how fast your boss wants to cut ties." Weston opened his mouth like he wanted to object, then saw the look on the attorney's face. Realized he wasn't the boss anymore. "You'll want to retain independent counsel," the attorney added, already turning toward the door. Jessica followed them with her eyes, but her legs didn't move. When the door slid shut behind them, she exhaled, loud, then whispered like she was trying to summon a version of herself that hadn't vanished. "I didn't think you'd go this far." Weston didn't answer. He was reading the last page of his own packet, and somewhere in the middle of it, he must have found the line about third-party liability exposure, because that's when he stood up and walked straight into the bathroom, shutting the door behind him without a word. She stared down at her envelope. 3 sheets of paper. 3 sheets that severed her income, her reputation, and her lifeline in less time than it took to post an anniversary selfie. No courtroom. No fights. Just legal oxygen, vacuum-sealed and removed. The walls weren't closing in. They'd already closed. Now they were just getting smaller. Her mother called me at 7:02 the next morning. I knew it was coming. She was always the one who tried to keep things civil, even when her daughter was setting metaphorical bonfires in every room. She didn't even say hello, just started speaking like she was apologizing to a stranger she hoped would still answer. "I'm so sorry for what she said," she murmured, voice cracking. "We had no idea. None of us did. That wasn't who she did." I cut in, not unkindly. She knew exactly what she was doing. That's why I prepared. There was a long silence on the other end. The kind that only happens when someone realizes they can't defend what's already been executed. "She's not." Well, her mother tried again, but softer this time, like she already knew it was a wasted breath. "We don't condone what happened. We're just trying to understand it." "You don't have to," I said. "You just have to decide if you're staying in her story or stepping out of mine." She didn't reply. I didn't need her to. I ended the call gently. No drama. No click. Then I opened the group chat titled Anniversary Zoom. Family thread, the same one I'd been too polite to leave, even after the video went nuclear. Her cousins, aunts, a few old college friends, my brothers-in-law. No one had spoken since that night. Just one long silence with a digital timestamp. I sent one message. Just a link. No caption. No emojis. The link led to a private video I'd filmed 3 nights earlier. A fallback plan. Not legal. Not vengeful. Just closure. The video began with me sitting in my study, in the same chair I'd used for client calls, investor briefings, and 12 years of building a life beside someone I thought would at least wait until the lawyers showed up to implode it. I didn't speak loudly. Didn't rant. Didn't name names. Just looked into the camera and said, "Some of you saw what happened on the call. Some of you didn't. What matters is this. I won't be explaining it. Because it doesn't need explaining. She made her choices. I've made mine. I wish her healing, but not return." I paused for a second, let that hang in the air, then added, "Please don't ask me to defend anything that wasn't my decision." The video ended with nothing but silence and the soft sound of a clock ticking in the background. I chose that deliberately. Clocks don't argue. They just count. After I sent it, I put the phone down and walked outside. The air was sharp. November had a way of reminding you what reality felt like. By the time I came back inside, there were already 2 replies. Her uncle, understood. Her sister, I don't know what to say, but I hear you. Then, slowly, the rest trickled in. One by one. Not dramatic. Not performative. Just realignment. Some sent just the thumbs up emoji. Others wrote nothing at all, quietly removing themselves from the group thread entirely. But not one person pushed back. Not one person asked for her side. They'd seen her side. In full Dolby surround sound. A day later, her brother messaged me privately. Just 4 words. She burned the bridge. I didn't reply. I wasn't standing on the other side of the bridge anymore. I was already somewhere else, building something new. And this time, no one else would get the blueprint. She showed up just after sunset, wrapped in a long beige coat like the fabric might shield her from the weight of her own decisions. A suitcase in one hand, sunglasses still on. Even though the sun had dipped an hour ago, that was always her thing. Perform the scene you wish you were living, not the one you earned. She hadn't been back to the house since before the call. Since the robe. Since the toast that became a grenade. She probably imagined some sort of cinematic reconciliation. Me answering the door with a long sigh, maybe a glass of wine in hand, her crying on the porch, whispering apologies framed by porch lights. What she got instead was the hard clink of a deadbolt that didn't recognize her anymore. The locks had been changed within 48 hours of her departure. Legally airtight. The title was mine. No joint ownership. No tenancy. No illusions. She knocked once. Waited. Knocked again. Louder. Nothing. Eventually, she tried the keypad she'd used hundreds of times. Got the red light. Tried again. Red. Again. Red. She stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of it starting to register. No key. No access. No right to complain. But I had left something for her. Not out of cruelty. Out of completion. The side door, the one we used to call her shortcut from the car, had been left ajar. Not unlocked, just unlatched. A signal. A farewell. She stepped inside. The hallway was darker than she remembered. Colder. The paintings were still there. Hers, mostly. But the frames were boxed, leaned neatly against the wall. The air smelled like cedar and finality. She walked into the kitchen. That marble island she once bragged about to all her followers. Imported Italian stone. Looks like ocean waves. Was bare. Except for one manila envelope, dead center. On top, a post-it note. 5 words. You chose your audience. I chose mine. Her hand shook as she peeled the note off. Opened the envelope. Inside, a flash drive. And beneath it, a still image from the Zoom call. Frozen at the exact moment she laughed into the camera and declared her boss a real man. Faces in tiny squares ringed around her. Stunned, confused, devastated. Her father's jaw slack. My niece's mouth open in horror. Her own mother covering her face with both hands. She let out a noise halfway between a breath and a sob. Dropped the envelope onto the floor. That's when she noticed it. Her belongings. Everything that had once marked the house as hers, now boxed. Taped. Labeled. Stacked neatly by the window like donations waiting for pickup. Shoes she wore once and posted a dozen times. The French press she never used. The copy of Untamed she told people changed her life. All of it boxed. Neutralized. She sank to the floor, back pressed against the fridge, still clutching the post-it like it could explain something. Her phone buzzed in her coat. She fumbled it out, praying for Weston's name. It wasn't him. It was a news alert. She tapped it open with a numb thumb. Breaking. Weston Tanning steps down as Hollenbridge CEO amid ongoing investigation. She didn't breathe, just kept reading. The article was surgical, clean, precise. Following mounting compliance concerns and SEC interest in potential misconduct, Mr. Tanning has voluntarily stepped aside pending the outcome of internal and federal reviews. And then, in small, italicized footnotes, the investigation includes 2 current and 1 former employee. Names withheld due to legal sensitivity. However, sources confirm a female subordinate, referred to internally as Employee 2, has been named in the inquiry. She read it twice. 3 times. Employee 2. Not even a name anymore. Just a tag. An alias for a liability. She opened her messages. Typed Weston. 3 bubbles. Then none. Nothing sent. Nothing received. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. She scrolled through her last text from him. Something about oysters and how I could never compete. She'd laughed at that line. Now, she couldn't even remember why it was funny. The house didn't echo. It swallowed. She looked around. No trace of herself left. No scent. No claim. Even the light felt like it belonged to someone else. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she finally stopped imagining the comeback. Because there was no comeback waiting. Just a silence that no one intended to fill. The deposition room was colder than it needed to be. Clinical, beige, stripped of identity. The kind of space designed to make people small. No clocks. No windows. Just the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet, precise tapping of a court reporter's keyboard. She sat stiff in a plastic-backed chair, hands folded in her lap like a child waiting to be scolded. Her hair was pulled back, too tight, trying to look composed. She wore a blazer that didn't fit like it used to, makeup that couldn't mask how many nights she'd spent staring at ceilings. Across from her sat 3 attorneys, 1 internal from Hollenbridge, 1 external from the SEC compliance oversight team, and 1 silent observer, representing their firm's largest institutional investor. They didn't introduce themselves beyond titles. No, how are you? No handshakes. The lead attorney leaned forward. His tone was dry, clinical. Ms. Linton, this deposition is being recorded. Please answer clearly and truthfully. Do you understand? She nodded, already sweating. State your name, please. Jessica Lynn Linton. Former position at Hollenbridge. Business Development Manager. Her voice cracked. And your supervisor at the time of your separation? A pause. Weston Tanning. Describe the nature of your relationship with Mr. Tanning. She hesitated. Looked around. No rescue coming. We were involved. Personally. The court reporter didn't flinch. Just kept typing. The attorney flipped a page. On October 3rd, during a digital video call attended by more than 100 individuals, several of whom were your family members, did you state, quote, "You don't satisfy me anymore. My boss knows how to please a real woman." She flinched. She exhaled. Yes, I said that. Did you knowingly imply that you were engaged in a sexual relationship with your direct supervisor during an open, recorded company-related call? I was drunk, she blurted. It was a joke. I didn't mean. The second attorney cut her off. The consequences weren't a joke. A heavy silence fell. He continued. Your statement initiated a cascade of contractual breaches. That call was being streamed through a work license device using a VPN associated with Hollenbridge infrastructure. You accessed sensitive materials from an unauthorized location on multiple occasions. Once from a property not legally owned by you, which is relevant because it voids your signed access waiver. She looked like she wanted to argue, but even she could tell it would make it worse. The first attorney opened a folder, slid a paper across the table toward her. This is an invoice for damages. She stared at it. Couldn't breathe. Your actions voided multiple non-disclosure protections, triggered an automatic third-party audit, and resulted in substantial exposure of Hollenbridge's private client strategy deck, he said. The value of the leaked data, combined with projected contract loss and investor withdrawals, comes to $7.4 million. She blinked. You're suing me for $7 million? The third attorney, the silent one, finally spoke. No, that's just your share of the initial breach. The firm's suing Weston separately. But I didn't mean, I never shared. You didn't have to. The second attorney said flatly. You made it discoverable. You made him discoverable. She looked down at the page. 7.4 million. Itemized. Categorized. Surgical. It wasn't a punishment. It was math. We're not here to destroy your life, Ms. Linton, the lead attorney added, almost kindly. But you have to understand what you did. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about infidelity. It was about liability. You made a spectacle of a regulatory violation, and now you're part of a chain of damages. Her mouth opened, then shut. There was nothing left to say. She signed the acknowledgement form with a shaking hand. The pen felt heavier than it should have. The court reporter marked the time. The attorney stood. No one told her, "Thank you." No one said, "Take care." As she gathered her coat, she caught her reflection in the glass door. Not a victim, not a villain, just a woman who confused spectacle for power. And now she couldn't even afford the coat. 3 months later, my home was finally quiet in a way that didn't feel like waiting. The dinner was small. 8 people, including my oldest friend from college, a colleague who'd walked with me through 2 business collapses and 1 merger, and the couple who lent me their beach cabin the week after the Zoom call detonated everything. No lavish setup, no catered menu, just grilled sea bass, a sharp white, and laughter that didn't need to prove anything. I didn't toast revenge. I didn't even mention her name. When someone finally asked, gently, cautiously, "Do you ever think about her?" I smiled. No bitterness, just a strange, surprising calm. "She reminded me who I used to be," I said. "I just chose not to stay him." They nodded. Nothing else needed to be said. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I stood at the kitchen sink washing the last of the wine glasses. I liked the stillness. No performative sighs from another room. No scent of perfume chosen for someone else's benefit. Just the clink of glass and the rhythm of a faucet I'd installed myself. Across the city, in a studio apartment that overlooked a construction site instead of the park, she was scrolling through job listings. Again, her inbox had dried up. HR emails had gone silent. Even Weston's silence had outlasted her desperation. The industry had closed its doors without ceremony. She sent out 12 applications the previous week. Not a single reply. People don't forget a face once it's attached to a scandal. Even the boutiques and startups she once mocked as beneath her weren't calling back. She spent her days refreshing career portals and her nights toggling between dating apps and late-night wine purchases, searching for someone, anyone, who hadn't seen the clip. Or worse, had, and wanted a front-row seat to her ruin. The envelope had arrived 2 weeks ago. She hadn't opened it. She thought if she left it untouched, it wouldn't count. Like the last page of a book you don't want to finish. But she knew who it was from. My handwriting. Still precise. Still calm. Tonight, she finally gave in. She slid her nail under the edge and opened it like she expected it to detonate. No legal documents. No invoices. Just a single sheet of paper. 5 words, centered, typed. "This was always your script." That was it. No threat. No insult. No emotion. Just a line she couldn't argue with. She folded it back into the envelope and set it on the table. Sat there, eyes blank, surrounded by the life she'd rewritten too many times. The room didn't echo. There was nothing left for it to bounce off of. No applause. No comeback arc. No finale. Just the quiet. Final. Absolute. The kind of quiet you only get after you've deleted yourself from your own story.